Yeah, that's good. Also, I'm gonna put this out a little bit. This is actually a very good headset and a very good mic. And I think last week it was too close and I could hear it. So Elaine, welcome. Elaine has been going through some surgeries and stuff. So let's see. Home from the hospital, very good. So glad to hear that. Oh, I want to go looking on this on the screen now. Glad to hear that you're doing well, Elaine. Hello, Steve. So we have some people with us in house, and notice how Steve said good morning. You can tell where Steve is. Uh, so we're just going to give it probably about 4 or 5 minutes and wait for some people to come in, and then we'll get started. This is a nice background compared to normally my normal background. One thing I've noticed with live streams, you see that little person that says 6? You can't trust that. Because I've had 6 or 7 people on and it says 0. Steve is saying posh venue I have here. Well, Steve, I'm at Empty Cloud. I'm in um, a 100-year-old building that's based off of a 500-year-old building in Europe. It's like a little castle manor, and this is the basement. This used to be a Catholic monastery. As a matter of fact, there's a St. Joseph's, my namesake. That's my English. That's what I was born as, Joseph. So there's a St. Joseph's right down the road. That was the school I went to, St. Joe's in the town where I'm from in southern New Jersey. Steve, Elaine, welcome. Sindhu, welcome. People are starting to come on in. Yes, Steve, there's even a Buddha. There's an actual Yes, Elaine, I'm here with well actually Bante Sudaso and Ayasoma are traveling. They're not here right now. Right now I'm the lone monk, monastic, but tomorrow they'll be back. Oh, Ian, welcome. Oh, Robert, welcome. Yeah, right now I'm in New Jersey. Well, I've been in New Jersey for about a month now. I was supposed to go to Virginia, but that fell through. Elaine, yes, I have the mansion. Well, no, I don't have the mansion to myself. We have residents and visitors here. All right. So we have enough people, I think. We've given it enough time, so let's get started. We are going to do some chanting in the Maggasekha chanting book. This is the first Dhammapalooza in over a year where there's other people besides me in the room. At one point, we've had different monastics on, like Tom Pamuto was on with me for a month and a half almost. But now we have multiple people. So let's do our chanting. We are on page 105, Bhara Sutta. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahaso samma sambuddhassa. Savatiyang tatrako bharanchavo bhikkave desesami bharaharancha bharadannancha bharanikke pannancha tang sunata katamocha bhikkave bharo panchupadana kanda tissa vachaniyang katame pancha Rupupadana kando, Vedanupadana kando, Sanyupadana kando, Sankarupadana kando, Vinyanupadana kando, Ayang vucchati bhikkave bharo, Katamocha bhikkave bharaharo, Puggalo tissa vachaniyang Yavayang Vayasma Evam Namo Evam Goto Ayang Vuchati Bhikkave Bharaharo Katamancha Bhikkave Bharadanang Yayang Tanha Pono Bhavika Nandiriya Gasaha Gata Tatra Tatra Binandini Seyatiddang Kamatanha Bhavatanha Vibhavatanha Idang Vuchati Bhikkave Bharaharadinang Katamancha Bhikkave Bharanikkepannang Yo tassa eva tanhaya asesa viraga nirodo chaggo patinissaggo muttiyanaliyo idang vucchati bhikkave bharanikke pananti idang voccha bhagava idang vatvana sugato attaparang etadavoccha satta Bharahave Panchakanda Bharaharo Chapuggalo Bharadanang Dukkang Loke Bharanikke Panang Sukang Nikkipitva Garung Barang Anyang Bharang Anadiya Samulang Tanha Bhaya Nichato Parinibbuto Ti. All right, now the English. The burden. At Savatthi, there the Blessed One said this, Bhikkhus, I will teach you the burden, the carrier of the burden, the taking up of the burden, and the laying down of the burden. Listen to that. And what, Bhikkhus, is the burden? It should be said, the 5 aggregates subject to clinging. What 5? The form aggregate subject to clinging. The feeling aggregate subject to clinging. The perception aggregate subject to clinging. The volitional formations aggregate subject to clinging. The consciousness aggregate subject to clinging. This is called the burden. And for those of you who were at the retreat this past weekend, when I went over this, we also know what these 5 aggregate subject to clinging are and the definition of dukkha. In brief, the 5 aggregate subjects to clinging are dukkha. So the burden, these 5 aggregates that we cling to, is the burden, is our suffering. So continuing on. And what, bhikkhus, is the carrier of the burden? It should be said, the person, this venerable one of such a name and clan. This is called the carrier of the burden. And what, bhikkhus, is the taking up of the burden? It is this craving that leads to renewed existence, accompanied by delight and lust, seeking delight here and there. That is, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, craving for extermination. This is called the taking up of the burden. And what, bhikkhus, is the laying down of the burden? It is the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving, the giving up and relinquishing of it, freedom from it, non reliance on it. This is called the laying down of the burden. This is what the Blessed One said. Having said this, the Fortunate One, the teacher, further said this: the five aggregates are truly burdens. The burden carrier is the person. Taking up the burden is suffering in the world. Laying down the burden is blissful. Having laid down the heavy burden without taking up another burden, having drawn out craving with its root, one is freed from hunger, fully quenched. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Deep Dhamma there. So let's see who we have. Okay, so there's not too much in the chat to have missed. Let's see here. Welcome, Douse. Evening. Douse is joining us from Eastern Europe, so it's quite late for him, but he stays up with us. All right, friends. So, welcome to yet another Dhammapalooza Monday night. No more Monday night football to compete with, so everybody should be here. All right, friends. So, I don't think I see anybody brand new. So, you guys mostly know the drill. Dhammapalooza is our 2-hour festival of Dhamma where we come together as a community to share the Dhamma together, right? With chanting, as we just did, the wonderful Bhara Sutta. And later on, we're going to do some meditation. And in between, well, that's up to you guys, as you know. So for the next couple minutes, we're going to keep an eye out on the chat. If you guys have any questions you'd like me to answer, if you guys have any topics you'd like me to discuss or to discuss as a community, okay? If you have anything like that, please feel free to type in the chat and we can go from there. If not, as you know, we always have a sutta ready. There's always sutta reading in case there's no questions. We also have some people here with us. So now see, I don't, let me, tell me your names again. Avira? So we have the Sile Gotami, Sile Avira, and Anagarika Jens, who is a um, who is a veteran of Dhammapalooza. He's been on the streams before, but now he's here as an Anagarika. So so we have some people in house, and they can also ask questions if they like. But and they also, we are projecting right on the screen, so they can see what you guys are typing. So now we all are all on the same page here. This is wonderful that they have a pretty good quality projector. So oh, Kevin, welcome. Yes, I'm at Empty Cloud currently. I'm going to be at Empty Cloud for the next week. Good question, Steve. So Steve says, I wonder sometimes whether you find the nomadic lifestyle sometimes frustrating. Uh, Frustrating. I don't think frustrating. Hmm. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think if I've been frustrated at all in the last 2 years. I don't think so. I guess I can talk a little bit about, one of the things that I've been lucky in my nomadic life is okay. How do you cope with things are uncertain? I can definitely talk about that. One of the things that I've been lucky in my nomadic life, and it's because of karma, it's because of my karma, probably both in past lives and this life, but because I was at Bhavana for so many years and I met so many thousands of people and I made so many connections that it's been a bit easier for me to find places to go and to be in my nomadic life. It's only been this year actually where I've started to like places where I had gone in the past are starting to not be able to be places where I can rely on to go. So so there's a couple of things this year that are falling apart, and it's been an interesting practice for me. So when I first started the nomadic journey, there was some fear. There was like, oh, but then afterwards, like that lasted maybe about a day. And then it's like, oh, wait a second. I'm free. I can go anywhere. I'm not tied down to any one place. And that has pretty much stayed with me. I went from Steve may or may not know a little bit of my history, but I went from being in a place where I was heavily burdened down, right? Living at Bhavana Society, essentially being vice abbot in all but name, essentially running the place, the day to day of the place, for years. And this is as a junior monastic, and also teaching in every retreat. Not the only teacher, thankfully. Thankfully, I only usually only had a day or two I had to teach, but and also coordinating the retreat. Like so, I was very very busy, very overwhelmed, and then I started being invited to go places, all different states, and at one point I was doing a retreat at Bhavana a month, and I was traveling to do a retreat someone in some other state a month. I was exhausted. It was a lot of very tied down, very very not good for my own practice. Right? I was doing so much for others that my own practice was suffering. And believe me, I loved it. I'm waiting for for things to really open up. I want to travel again and share Dhamma. I love being in person with people. Dhammapalooza is great. Zoom is great, but there's nothing like sharing Dhamma with people live. There's nothing like it. It's the best. It's one of my favorite things to do in this world, and I'm looking forward to being able to do that again. To go to various places. Um, but even still, there needs to be a balance. And that's one of the things that I've been able to do since becoming a nomad is work on myself again, right? Get myself back into a more balanced place, right? A more, um, a better place, like better for my mental state, right? All of these things. And the last, you know, COVID years have been good for me for that. And being a nomad and being able to kind of be in places where not a lot of is expected of me. I stayed on the farm and I took care of the chickens and that's all I needed to do. And I just took care of the chickens and I did my thing and I hung out with the people and I was able to talk with them and share Dhamma. And then I come to Empty Cloud and I do a little bit here, and I do the daily work. But again, I'm not running the place. So I don't envy Aya and Bante at all. Eventually, when I start my own place, then I'll have to deal with it. But for now, for at least the next 4 to 5 years, a nomad is good. Less responsibility, like from Karaniya Metta Sutta, with few duties, living lightly. In the Bhavana days when I'd be like, oh, it's like, oh yeah, with few duties, living lightly. I want to be like that. And now I can be, right? With few duties, living lightly. And and so that's what I'm doing now as a nomad. Like I have freedom. Now, of course, it does get a little, it does get a little worrisome. See, the thing about me is, again, I'm lucky, good, comma, whatever. I also have good family, right? Close Italian family, and my family would never have me on the street, right? So if there's no monastery that can take me, if there's no other place that can take me, I always have my family, right? And then the Buddha allowed that. The Buddha made that the only people that a monk, a monastic can ask anything of is their family, right? So I do have, I spent the last month with my sister, and my little niece and nephew, 2.5 and 4.5, right? And I was supposed to be at a monastery in Virginia, but then they didn't have room for me to come, so it just didn't work out. Um, and so I stayed I was a monk in lay life for a little bit, which happens, right? So I'm not ever in danger of being on the street, right? And there's some monastics that um, probably could be in that danger. So I'm lucky in that regard. Um, but on the other hand, I also am very, very cognizant of being too much of a burden on any one person, which is why it's good if you're a nomad, you stay for a month and then you go somewhere else, right? You're not a burden. Um, and of course, nobody says I'm a burden because everywhere I go, I'm doing something. I'm working something like, when I'm on the farm, I was taking care of the chickens. When I'm with my sister, I'm, part babysitter. My 2.5-year-old niece calls me Uncle Munkle, like a monk uncle, right? So I'm always, and of course the places that are more Dhamma centric, they understand as a monk that I have a lot to give with the Dhamma as well. But so in this nomad journey, this is kind of my life, and it's kind of, right now I'm learning how to be very mobile. Like right now I have my laptop, right? I brought my laptop in on my tray, and it's like being able to kind of, and everywhere I go, it's a new place, a new sleeping arrangements, new schedule, new this, and so being able to kind of be able to go with the flow of that and to adapt, to there's a part of me that's like when I come to like a monastery, there's a part of me that's like you being used to having my own schedule and doing my own thing, and it's like, oh, they want me to wake up to do puja. Like these kind of things. There's a part of me that's like, is not happy with that, but then there's a part of me that's like, I get to be with sangha, right? There's there's ups and downs in that regard. And so it's all uncertain, and this is the thing. One of the things that Ajahn Brahm, when I got to meet and spend time with Ajahn Brahm years ago, and I was with Bante Sudaso, and Ayasoma wasn't ordained at the time. She was just she was the layperson, but Ajahn, I was there teaching. I did a retreat there, and then I stayed because Ajahn Brahm was coming. And so we got to spend a couple of days with Ajahn Brahm, and Ajahn Brahm just walks in from the airport with literally just his monk bag, and I'm like, "What?" And so I asked him all these questions, and I asked him about like this kind of thing of like support and thing, and he said, "Trusting karma to provide," and that's something that I've reflected on. This was 4 years ago, right? For those 4 years, I've reflected on that. And like when there's times of like, oh my God, am I gonna get another, like, do I have another place to stay, this and that? And I was like, okay, I gotta trust in karma to provide. Right. And that's not the same as like trusting in the universe to give me what I please, universe, let me have a place to stay. But it's relying on my own good deeds, right? In this life and in past lives. That, it's gonna be okay. Things will work out. I have to have a little bit of faith. Like there is definitely this room of like taking a leap of faith in Buddhism, right? Well, as Westerners, we tend to like not want to hear this thing about faith when it comes to Buddhism, but there is this, there's aspects of faith in Buddhism, um, and this is something that is part of my practice. So dealing with uncertainty is just kind of just a little bit of it is being able to see the positive side of uncertainty, right? So when we think of uncertainty, what we're thinking of is negativity, right? We're always thinking of, oh, it's going to make it, things are going to be worse. Right? But things could actually be better. You don't know, right? But you have to kind of counteract your mind in that. You have to think, your mind says, oh my God, this is going to be worse. And you say, well, actually, no, it could be better. This could be a good thing. Right? When I went to stay, hey, come on. When I went to stay in the tent at Aranya Bodhi Hermitage, there's a part of my mind that's like, oh my God, are you crazy? You're disconnected, all these things. And then there's a part of my mind that's like, I've been waiting for this for so long. So you have to kind of work with that and counteract when your mind tells you a narrative, when your mind says something negative, you say, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's investigate that. Let's question that. Don't just believe whatever your mind tells you, right? Because think about Mara in the suttas, right? Mara comes and whispers, "You should do this," right? And you see in the Therigatha, the bhikkhus and the bhikkhunis, they say, "No, I see you, Mara." Right? So sometimes Mara comes, and you have to question. You say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Wait a second. Let's not be so negative here. Let's really see, is this reality?" And you'll see that, living with uncertainty, we always think that things are going to be negative, or we always worry about so many things that end up not happening. Right? The Buddha in the suttas says, whatever they think it will be, it ends up otherwise. So we think, oh, it's going to be this way. And then it turns out to be totally different. I wasn't even a Buddhist and I started to understand that yet. Right? When I started to try to be more positive, trying to think more positively. Um, I never tried to get the universe to give me stuff, but but I recognized early that thinking positively is important, counteracting that negative mind. So we can understand with uncertainty, people who the explorers, they go out into the world, right? And not just, whatever, Chinese explorers, European explorers, our ancient ancestors when we were hunter gatherers in the early days, right? There was danger out in the world, right? There were beasts, you know, yakas maybe and nagas, all kinds of beasts that could take you out. But there was also lots of good that you could find, right? New places for hunting for your people, new places, good places for, to settle down or to survive in, these kind of things, right? So there's always this in uncertainty, there's always this negative and there's always positive. Yeah, you could die tomorrow. Right? But we know in Buddhist practice, we should be remembering that every day that, hey, guess what? I woke up today. I might not be alive to go to sleep. I might be gone. So you recognize, so being dealing with uncertainty, a large part of that is dealing with fear and being courageous. Right? We see this in the suttas, like the monastics, bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, going out into the wilderness, right, to practice. And yeah, they could die, but you could go into the town and get food, and it's bad, and then you die of food poisoning. Like poor, like Chunda, blacksmith Chunda, who gave Buddha his last meal, right? You think you're going to die from the jaguar, and you get run over by a by a horse cart. So uncertainty is life. We are immersed in uncertainty. We have to be. Why? Because Buddha tells us, what's the first characteristic of existence? Anicca. All things are unstable, undependable, impermanent. We literally are immersed in it. Everything. You can think, whatever's hanging on the wall, that can fall down. My headset can stop, it can break. It's only a month old, but it could still break. Who knows? Right? Something, I could have a heart attack right now. There's all kinds of things that could happen. But chances are I'll be okay. The stream will end. I'll go to bed and I'll wake up and then I'll be alive tomorrow. But I might not be. So this is why the Buddha tells us, right? You guys, those of you who are part of the community, what's the motto? What's the Maggasekha mindset? Live like the mountains are closing in. Practice like your head's on fire. Raise high the banner of seers and roar your lions roar. Right? That's the Buddha's attitude of how to live. Old age, sickness, and death are coming in. It's all you live in its uncertainty. So how do you choose to live? The fifth of the five remembrances. You are the owner of your karma. You're the owner of your actions. How do you choose to live? That's really the only question. How do you choose to live? All this other stuff, that's reality. You're not changing it. You're not getting rid of impermanence. Right? This is the nature of reality. So how do you choose to live? That's how you do with uncertainty. And so I'm pretty hard-headed and I'm pretty idealistic. And so when things are uncertain and I might start to get fear, I say, well, you know, I'm not going to waste time in this. I'm going to try to what can I do? What do I need to do now? And then I move forward. Getting mired in uncertainty and mired in doubt, that's where you don't go anywhere. You're just stuck and it's not good. So I've been yapping on now for a while. So let me check the chat here. The chat has been going on. And you guys know in the chat that when you type in the chat, when you're talking to each other in the chat, that's not disrespectful to me. That's not interrupting me. This is a community event and we're supposed to be talking together. So you guys are always welcome to say hello to each other and to talk Dhamma. No problem. So let's check the chat here. Elaine, what health conditions did the Buddha have and what karma influenced their manifestation? Uh, I don't know that he had any specific ones. I mean, Devadatta tried to kill him, so he he got hurt in his toe. When he got older, the body became sore and he had to rest the body and things like that. I don't know that he had any specific ailments or illnesses. Right? When we're pretty, sure from the suttas that he was a very healthy, healthy bodied young person when he went forth. Um, but we do see in the suttas, like in the sutta called Aging, where the sutta begins with old Buddha warming himself by the rays of the setting sun. And Ananda says, "It's amazing, Bhante, that at one point your complexion was so bright and your skin was so smooth, but now your complexion is gone and your skin is wrinkly." And the Buddha says, "Yes, such is the way when you are born, old age." Right? This is how it goes. This is the nature of things. So you see that the Buddha, even if you're an awakened being, until you become parinibbana, until you become fully extinguished, you have the karma of your body. Angulimala, the Buddhist serial killer, he became awakened, but he had the karma of his reputation, and he had the karma of this life that he was in. People he go for alms around and they throw stones at him and things like that. That's still, of course, mentally they don't suffer. It's just the way it is. They've become awakened. They're beyond this. They're not suffering from it, but it's still something that has to be endured. Just because Buddha is awakened doesn't mean the body doesn't need rest. Maybe the Buddha only had to sleep 2 or 3 hours a night or something like that, so he doesn't need to sleep 8 hours. But the body still needs rest, even if you're awakened. Kevin is bringing up a point. Oh, maybe this is true. Maybe this is from a Jataka. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Uh, Bhikkhu Bodhi, I recall Bhikkhu Bodhi once said that the Buddha suffered from back pain, and I think there was some connection to karma from him being a fisherman in previous life. So yeah, so then it would be a Jataka. All right. Well, Elaine, there's even in our Maggasekha community, we have multiple people who have some kind of continuing issue. Lots of pain and issue. Adriana, I don't think Adriana is with us today. Adriana, right? You? There's definitely a couple people. Any sangha, any group of people, there's going to be at least a couple that have some kind of permanent or semi-permanent issues that they're dealing with physically. It's the nature of having a body. Elaine says, new mantra for me, trusting karma to provide. Beautiful. Yes, but remember, you create your karma. So you have to perform good deeds and you have to act skillfully, and then you can have a vast storehouse of karma to to rely on to provide for you. All right. Douse brought up Ajahn Brahm. Yes, good, bad, who knows? Exactly. Yeah. Elaine, so did you end up practicing any of mindfulness of death before your surgery? I remember we were talking about this like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I told the story about how I practiced mindfulness of death as I was in the plane before I did my skydive. And also before I did my bone marrow donation, before I went under the anesthesia, because I might not make it out. It's good those are good times to practice mindfulness of death. Oh, no, no, that was before I was a monk. No, that was like 2 years before I became a monk, than when I went skydiving. The bone marrow donation, I was a monk. Yeah. Douse brings up a sutta reference, killed by a stray cow. Yes. A couple of times in the suttas where we have somebody getting the final teaching from the Buddha and then wanting to go and practice and dying from the stray cow. Robert, Robert, that's a very valid experience. Yeah. So Robert says we don't know our karma from our previous lives. So as an anxious person, putting my faith in karma is hard. Yes, for me too. It's hard to let go. That's what it is. I think if anything, really, it's a teaching of learning to let go. That's really what it is. But that was very profound from Mahjong Brahm when he said that. It was just I was literally like 2 feet from him, and he just turned to me and he said, "Trusting karma to provide." And I was like, "Whoa!" And then it was like, okay, it took me some, contemplating it for a couple years, but now well, see, this is the thing. This is what I've learned, and this is kind of even before that thing with Ajahn Brahm. But what I found is my own statement that that's been proven true to me a couple of times. This is why I came up with the statement. But what I found is the more I let go, the more I get. Like the times where I've like been afraid to let go, but then I actually do, and then I actually end up getting what I was letting go of, or even better, right? So there is something to that. There is something to this trusting in karma to provide, of letting go. There is something to that. I don't know 100% what it is, but there's definitely something to it, at least for me to trust in it. You just, when you follow this practice, there's just, things that happen that you wonder, like the spider doing walking meditation with me. A lot of you guys know that. After I did like a year of heavy, metta to spiders, and all of a sudden they're just hanging out with me. These kind of things happen, and they make you question, you know, well, what's going on here? This is why, and this is why I'm the kind of person that believes that there's a lot more to the world than what we know and than what we can know. Um, and this is why I've never been a skeptic atheist type. I've always been agnostic. Iway. Okay, this is somebody I don't believe I recognize. So welcome, Iway. He says just dropping in for a moment. Oh, nice to meet you. Thank you for coming in. Oh, Adriana's here. Welcome, Adriana. Adriana is the lone uh, YouTube channel mod, as you can see. So don't do anything bad, or else she'll kick you out. All right. Adriana, I'm sure you're familiar with this background. You've been here in person before. All right. Adriana has only ever had to use her mod powers once, when we had Adolf Hitler come into the chat and do some trolling and spamming, which is kind of sad because I always get a kick out of those things. This is how you should deal with lots of things in life like that. When people are trying to, as we say, get your goat, or push your buttons, to have fun with it and to laugh at it. This way, they have no power over you. All right. Robert says, speaking of anxiety, any useful tips on how to deal with it? Um, so practicing a lot of mindfulness in your body, like satipatthana, is very important, because what that will do is allow you to understand, like, when anxiety is arising. Now, also practicing understanding your mind is also very important in that. But a lot of times, because the mind is very subtle, it's easier to see, like, the signs of anxiety in your body first than your mind. But really understanding the anxiety, really knowing it, observing it, trying to be able to catch it before it arises, right? Understanding what triggers the anxiety, also very important. This all comes from wisdom, from the practice. Now, of course, if you have like an anxiety attack, right? Some people, it gets to the point, this is like a medical thing, right? Or like a deeply psychological thing, where there needs to be other interventions, right? But usually, like, taking breaths, like deep breaths, helps to kind of calm the mind down. But these are like kind of short-term solutions. Anxiety, like everything else that is conditioned, has a cause. You need to investigate that cause. And if it's bad enough, there's meditation involved in that, and there's uh, therapy involved in that. There's no shame in that. I did 4 years of therapy myself in the early days. Yeah, there's lots of us who have done, been with therapists and things like that. And so this is why, if it's strong enough, and this is meditation is not therapy. Right? Meditation in conjunction with things can be helpful, but the main thing is to really come to know your anxiety. This is what I did with my depression. Even before I was a Buddhist, I really wanted to investigate it and to know it. 'Cause I've always been like an investigator. I want to see for myself, to investigate. And I think that's why Buddhism just kind of fit with me so naturally. But I wanted to know. So I started to observe my depression, to start to see the cycles of it, right? How it would arise. Like I started to see the signs. Like when my depression was hitting, I'd be more paranoid. Like somebody might, do something with their eyes or say something, and normally I wouldn't think anything of it, but then all of a sudden it would be like, oh, like they're agitated with me, or this or that, right? And so I'd notice I'd be more paranoid. I'd read into things more, right? I'd be more agitated. I'd be less patient and agreeable with people. I'd notice all of these things, and then I'd be like, ah, okay, I have this mind state now. So now I need to be careful so I don't do anything bad with this mind state, right? Because I don't want to make myself suffer more. So you investigate these things, know them very deeply. If you have anxiety, it's an object of meditation. If you have depression, it's an object of meditation. To know, you have to know. This is again, this is everything. The Buddha tells everything we should know. See how it arises, see how it ceases. How does this arise? How does this cease? What is the gratification? What is the danger? What is the escape? This is seeing with vipassana. This is seeing things deeply. To understand this deeply, no matter what it is, even anxiety, even depression. But and then some people need medication. That's another thing, But um, even if you are like bipolar, and you need medications and things like that, you still need to investigate. You can observe. The meditation practice is still very important. All right. So Adriana has a question. Before Adriana has a question, I did say that my friends here can also ask questions. So do you any of you guys have anything you'd like me to talk about or anything? If you don't have to think of anything. No problem. But if you do, I just wanted to allow for you all to add in stuff as well. Yeah.
I think there was some discussion about counting as one of the parameters, but also counting in the practice. Can you talk a little bit more about how counting patience is reflected? I was thinking about that as you were talking about the nomad lifestyle, how you might use counting or how that comes into your practice in dealing with, even in our own self, dealing with anicca, dealing with uncertainty.
Mm. All right. So Anagarika Jens is talking, asking a question about kanti, about patience. So, and we know the famous line, kanti paramang tapotitika. Patience is the best practice. This is very, very important. And we also see in the suttas where the Buddha says, my disciples endure hot and cold and rain and gadflies and things like this. Um, so, patience, being able to patiently endure things, is without a doubt part of the practice. And patience, like metta, like many things, has to be trained, has to be practiced. Right? You have to also have sati. Remember, sati is not just mindfulness, it's also recollection. You have to have sati to be patient. You have to remind yourself, but remember, patience, patience, patience. And so this is something that you develop. You see opportunities for it in the practice, right? In your life. Wherever if you're in traffic in your car, right? When I was coming here, we were in some pretty strong North Jersey traffic, which is which is normal, right? If you're waiting online at the grocery store, all kinds of ways, and you notice agitation, that's when you say, okay, let me try to apply patience. let me try to patiently endure, right? Or when you are sitting and you're following your breath and pains and itches arise, and just let me try to patiently endure. Let me try to not scratch that itch. Let me try to not adjust my posture. Let me try to endure it. Let me try to endure it. And then you can for a little while. But then at a certain point, it's like a dam breaking and you're done. There's no more. I have no more patience left. So, in that way, patience is a lot like willpower, right? Willpower and patience are very limited in scope. You might be able um, to practice and develop so that you have strong patience. But real patience comes from insight. Right? It's very important that we understand this. Like I remember talking to Bante G one time about my metta because my metta was kind of flailing and it wasn't as blissed out as it used to be. And he said something that applies to even Kanti, even patience. He says, until you see deeply impermanence, your metta will only be skin deep. So Kanti, patience, this is the same thing. Right? We can practice and develop and endure it, but real deep patience also comes from our wisdom, from our understanding. So when we understand pain, when we understand things that test our patience, actually, they test our patience a lot less. It's not as, we don't have to apply anything as much because actually, naturally, because of our wisdom, we have more patience. I'll give an example of myself in my early days, where I was very self-judgmental and self-critical, and I was like, I hated my. Actually, I'm pretty much sure I hated myself, and because of that, also, I pretty much hated all humans too. You hear these people today who are like, humans are a virus on the planet, and it's better off if we're all dead. Right? You hear this kind of mindset. That was me. I remember that mindset. And so I had very little patience for people because I had very little patience for myself. But then as I practiced and I developed insight and I understood my mind more, and I had much more patience and much more compassion and metta for myself. And likewise, I had much more patience and compassion for other people. Still to the, I mean, I'm a monk, and some people like want to come and they're like, Bante, blah, 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 blah. And like, there's a part of me that's like, oh, okay, what about your problems? And what about why are you dealing with me? I'm a monk. Like, why are you coming to me with your marital problems? Like, there's a part of me that's like that, but then there's a part of me that's like, well, wait a second, patience. This person is coming to me for certain, let me be there with them. Right? Remember, active listening, all the things that I developed as a child protective service worker. I should be there, but there's part of me that I have to remember patience. I have to be like, oh, I'm dealing with my own stuff, but now people want want me to deal with their stuff. It's not easy, right? And 'cause I'm not awakened. My patience is limited as well. I mean, I have maybe more patience than most people, but my patience is limited. So I have to practice and make sure that I remember to be patient. Remember that. No, 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 Jaisara, wait. Patience. You owe it to this person to be with them, right? They trust in you to want to talk to you about these things. Oh, thank you. And you should be so patience is important. Patience. Now, of course, Adriana and Reed and the mods, they've seen that side of me that a lot of you probably haven't. They've seen the more grumpy side of Bante J and the more impatient side of Bante J. But they're sworn to secrecy. But this is how it is, right? We're all on this. We're all on the path. We're all practicing. And there, see, Adriana knows she's laughing. So, having patience with yourself. That's the first important to be patient. Um, Jens, was there any aspect of the question that I didn't cover?
No, that was very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
I'd like to more, like if you can describe, like there are times when we are hard on ourselves, and like you already mentioned, we have to find out the signs of anxiety or some down states, anxiety, depression. We struggle with ups and downs, and so like I just want to elaboration of how to relate those signs. As you told, we have to catch it before it takes over you. And so yeah.
Well, it's not, you're not gonna, it's not that you have to catch it before it takes over you, but if you can, that's good. That's a sign of progress. Um, most of the time, we just find ourselves in it, right? Because we don't have the mindfulness, and it's just all of a sudden, okay, now we're in it. Um, and I think that what's important to remember is to question it, right? Always to question what your mind says, to counteract it. Right? If my mind says, Jayasara, you're horrible, I say, well, wait a second. Well, what about X, Y, and Z? Or my mind says, I can't believe that monastic. They're such a blah, blah. Why are they? And I was like, well, Jayasara, what about you? Right? Like the Buddha tells us this, right? To don't worry about the omissions and commissions of others, but what you have done and what you haven't done. Right? If you're really harsh on yourself, if that comes up, you still do the same thing. You still just don't question. That's why the Buddha has us practice what? Sila nusati, right? To recollect our good deeds. Is there a mitya nusati? Recollecting our bad deeds? No, because we don't have to. Our mind is already on the bad deeds. So we have to remember our good deeds to counteract that. Or we have to remember our good deeds. We have to counteract that. If your mind says, blah, 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 you say, I see you, Mara. I see you, Mara. No, they could be right. Just because what Mara says, it doesn't mean Mara is always wrong. Could be right. There might be a point, but that doesn't mean you should just uncritically just accept it, even from your own mind. You say, well, let me see, is this right? Because I have a sensitivity to hypocrisy. I've always had it. And so I'm very sensitive when I see other people are hypocrites, and I'm also sensitive when I'm a hypocrite. And so my mind will be like, are you being a hypocrite? And I have to wait. Well, wait a second. Let me see. Hold on. Back it up. Let's think about this. Let's investigate this. And let me see. Am I being a hypocrite? And so I go through it and I say, okay, maybe I'm being a bit of a hypocrite here. But no, in general, no, I'm not being a hypocrite. Or you see, and then you can learn from that. That's mindfulness, to understand. Okay, this, but that we shouldn't. We have to make sure that we're not oppressed by our own mind, because that's what we are. We can be oppressed by our own mind, and to be able to question that, that's freedom. To be able to question our mind, so a thought arises, and we don't instantly just believe it. We say, wait a second. Because remember, when the Buddha is talking about salayatana, the sense basis, right? There's the internal and the external. The internal sense base is the mind. The external sense base is thoughts. So the Buddha is telling us our thoughts are external, right? What's coming in, it's coming in. And so we shouldn't just automatically trust it. We should question it to see if it's really true or not. It could be, it could not be. But not being oppressed by your own mind is a wonderful blessing. Because I remember how it was, and I know how it is now. I was like, oh, I'm so happy I meditated for all these years and listened to the Buddha's instructions. Yeah. All right. Douse says, now I am compelled to practice patience. Very good, Douse. Although Douse is a very, very patient person already. So he's pretty it's hard to fluster Douse. Adriana is saying how much I love trolls. Yeah, I'm a bit of a that's why I am Yakaraja. That's my nickname is on the Discord, Yakaraja, King of the Yakas. It's a story. I have a lots of compassion for Yakas. I think they are misunderstood. Yeah, yeah. Well, I just thought Yakas were just like ogres and trolls, and then I read the sutta where the Yaka mother brings her Yaka child to listen to the Buddha teach. And I said, "Oh, wait a second, no, they're not. We have to, have metta and compassion for the Yakas as well." And so now, and then I joked that I was a Yaka in a past life, so now I'm Yaka Raja. All right. Okay, Adriana. Okay, this is where we left off, Adriana. Bante, what about those moments where it just feels impossible to let go? Or when you know letting go is right thing to do, but you just can't? You just recognize that you can't. Just tell yourself, I'm not there yet. It's okay. You're not going to be perfectly skillful. You're going to be unskillful. Especially if you have even something close to an addiction, like with alcohol or drugs or food, like in my case. Sometimes you're just going to find yourself being unskillful and you have no power. You've lost your power. The only thing you can do when I find myself in those situations, I recognize, Jay, you're out of your league, right? You're not there yet. And then I reckon the only thing I can do is what can I learn from this? Let me bring my mindfulness. Let me try to be as mindful of this. Let me try to investigate this as much as I can. What can I learn from this? Because that's all you can do. That's all you can do is reflect on it and try to be as mindful as possible as what's going on so you can see it deeply. Other than that, you have to have expectations that match reality, right? If your expectations are is I'm good. I'm always going to be able to do it. Then when when reality comes knocking and it doesn't match your expectations, you're going to suffer. You have to know that you're not perfect and that you're in training. Sika padang samadhiyami. You're in training. You can't have this thought that you're supposed to be perfect. You have to train to be perfect. You have to reflect on that. I'm a monk. I have 227 rules plus another 3,000 or so, counting the dukkhatas. I'm trying to think if there's a 2-week period since I've been a monk that I haven't broken one rule or another. There's been a couple, but there's a lot of rules you can break. Right? I mean, no major rules. I'm a monk still. No major rules. Mostly, lots of minor rules. But you can't expect that that you are not going to fail. You're going to fail. What matters is you get back up and you try again and you learn from it. That's what matters. Right? The Buddha's way of forgiveness. Acknowledge you've committed a transgression, make amends for it, practice future restraint. That's what you need to do. If it's impossible, it's impossible. Learn from it what you can. That's all you can do.
Sometimes when we are doing skillful thing, it's going good. But something an extreme in a skillfulness also leads us to unskillfulness.
Mm.
You're doing some unskillful action. Then it again brings back the dukkha.
Yeah.
Then it is also like a hard part to let it go.
Yeah.
It's sometimes complicated. Then how to deal with the dukkha that comes along with it?
Endure it and investigate it. That's it. There's just, and questioning your mind and things like that. But you have to. The, when it comes to the practice, there's only so much that you can do. There's whatever it is, you can investigate it. Whatever it is, what can I learn from this? How do I let it go? How do I let it go? You can investigate the gratification, the danger, and the escape. That's one way of doing it. Why do I keep doing this thing? There has to be a gratification. There has to be a reason I keep doing this thing. Why do I keep doing it? What's the downside of doing this? You're reflecting on, why do I keep doing this to myself? Why do I keep overeating? I'm gaining weight. Why do I keep doing this? Right? You're reflecting on that over and over. And you have to, sometimes it'll take years.
Like question and answer don't clearly come up. That's
Mhm.
quite frustrating.
Yeah, you have to, it's like each time you're reflecting on something, each time you're encountering something, you're going to learn a little bit from it. And over years, you get to know it and understand it more and more and more. But if it's something that's very deep seated, it can take decades. With my food issues, I've been practicing for a long time and I've overcome many things. But my food issues are not fully overcome. They're not. If I'm in a bad enough mood, 10 o'clock at night, I'm going to the kitchen to get some food. That's my habit. That's what I have done. I've used food as a coping mechanism, right? As a friend, as a brief pleasant feeling to deal with unpleasant feeling. That's what the Buddha tells us that we do in Salla Sutta, the simile of the arrow. That when we feel unpleasant feelings, we go for pleasant feelings because that's all we know. That's the only escape we know. Yeah. Yeah. So all we can do is investigate it, understand it. How can I learn from this? How can I overcome this? Right? And you have to find that through practice and through in dealing with it over and over again. It's going to come back up. It's going to come back up. How do I skillfully manage this? And how do I starve it so that it comes back less powerful next time? How do I not feed this and make it worse? How do I make it less so that it doesn't have so much power over me? That's how you think about these things to understand them. And over time, you learn more. And then sometimes it takes decades. I make the joke that at this point, um, my food issues will probably be the last thing to go before I become awakened. So they'll be there. And then finally it's like, oh, I've overcome them. Now I'm an arhat. Uh, Steve says, I think there's an Ajahn Jayasara too. I'd be interested to know how monastics come by their ordained name. So I'm keeping an eye on the time. This is a question heavy Dhammapalooza, but we always want to do our meditation too. So we have maybe in about 15 minutes or so, we'll do our meditation. So we can have 5 minutes to close out in the end. But we've got to keep out an eye on the time. So Ajahn Jayasaro, and Bhante Jayasara are the same name. It's the same Pali name. It's the same Pali word. It's a different declension. The O is the vocative. You'll see this in Thai forest names. Brahmavang So, Sume Do, Sujato. Right? You'll see that, especially among Western monastics. I think this was maybe partially a naming heuristic used. So Jayasaro, same name. And so that we have the same name. He's my my older brother. I said by Ajahn Jayasaro. He's been ordained as long as I've been alive. I'm 44. I think he's maybe 45 at this point. Years as a monk, or maybe 42. I don't know, but he's been ordained at least 40 years. And so but it's the same name, same meaning. And so there's a list of names, many hundreds of Pali names that have come down through the years, through the centuries and the millennia. And these are used for naming conventions. These are, most of the names you see, like we know, oh, Bhante Sujato, he's a famous monk. You know how many? There's about probably 4,000 Bhante Sujatos in the world, at least. Right? There's lots of Bhante Sujatos. Right? There's probably a bunch of Ajahn Brahms. Maybe not Ajahn, but there's probably a bunch of Bhante Brahms. Right? There's these names, you know, are pretty common. So when I received the name Jayanta when I took the 8 lifetime precepts as a layperson under Bhante G. And in Sri Lanka, that's as common as my name, my name Joseph, right? In America, in English speaking, European, Joe is like the most common name for a man, right? And so in Sri Lanka, Jayanta is one of the most common names for a Sri Lankan man, right? And there's also corporations, Jayanta Corporation, right? So when I was going to be a bhikkhu, Bhante Silananda and Bhante Gunaratana said, this is not a bhikkhu name. So I said, well, a bunch of people, the people already know me as Bhante J. Let's keep the Jaya. So Bhante G went, okay, let me see. It took him about a minute or two, and he says, okay, Jayasara. And that's how I got my name, Jayasara, right? And they all have nice meanings, of course. If you go to Bhavana Society, or even through me, I am of the Bhavana lineage, so I can do it as well. You get your lifetime precepts, and you get a name. I've given a Pali name to about 5 or 6 people in the Maggasekha community over the years. They have a system where they know by the day of the week that you were born, and that gives you letters, and then you choose a name that you kind of think embodies the person, if you know them well, within those letters. All right.
Ask the question. Like Buddha says, association with right people is the whole of the holy life. But it's rare to find the right association that can help us in the further life. So, like, how to like find the right people for the association, and also if we are not having the right association, how can we still stick to our good practices?
All right. So the question was about Kalyanamitas, something that we talk about quite often, about how to find good Kalyanamitas. And the last part was about how to
Even we are not having that connection.
when you don't have any.
Like, we stick to what's right and
Yeah.
not get affected by the
Yeah. Elaine says she wants a name. Well, okay, Elaine, send me an email, and we'll work on it for sure. Definitely. So talking about Kalyanamitas. So we I don't know, maybe it's the same in India, maybe it's the same with parents all over the world. But in America, we make the joke, the parents always say, be careful who your friends are, right? Because whoever your friends are, that's going to be what you're going to be like. And then, somebody will say, my friend is doing it, and then the parent will say, if your friends jump off a bridge, are you going to as well? Right? you know so there's this there's this deep understanding in human nature and culture that you have to be careful who you choose to spend your time with, who you choose to influence you. So it's very important. That's why, I mean, the Buddha says, um Kalyanamita is the whole of the holy life. You have to know this, that um this is true for both laity and monastics, but it's very, very important for monastics as well. This is something that I learned. It took me a long time to learn this, but I don't think I really understood how important it is to have good Kalyana as a monastic until I didn't have any. You know, and obviously, like our senior teachers can be Kalyana, but there's also in the suttas, in the Vinaya, you see this Kalyanamitta is a bit more than just a wise person who you can ask questions to. It's somebody who you really you're traveling the path with. Somebody who you're really kind of it's like you're part of a group, like you're together traveling the path. You're supporting each other, actively supporting each other. Right? That's really what you need as a layperson, but especially as a monastic. You need to have that. And I've never had that. I've had the being around very wise senior monastics, but I've never had the monastics my age or and we're all kind of striving together. But I see that's what you see in the suttas. That's what you see in the Vinaya. That's how the most ideal way it should be. And so, since I don't have that, well, I say, well, okay, well, what's the next best thing? And the next best thing is what I'm doing is, traveling and trying to be around other monasteries and to make connections with them so that in the future I can be closer with them. Like I went to when I spent a week at Abhayagiri in California, and they don't know me. Well, some of them actually did know me. um, eh, and But this is a place where it's a real community, and there's a bunch of monastics, and they're together, and they practice together and things like that. And so then you get that sense of oh, we're all in this together. So I really like this place. And I'm an outsider coming in, and I was accepted as an outsider, and I was even invited to come back. And so then I've made that connection. Now I have Kalyanamitas that I can go back to in the future, that I can be with. So it's actively fostering those connections with Kalyanamitas, right? And they might not necessarily be uh, wiser than you. They could be as wise as you. Even they might not be as wise as you. but they're still being skillful, they're still following the path, right? There's still a support for you. Because what happens is we don't have the zeal for practice all the time. We lose it. And if we're not around other people to kind of, hey, let's go. Let's go meditate. Let's go in the woods. Let's do, let's go chant. If we don't have people like that around us, well, then it's much more likely that we're just going to, okay, well, I don't feel like doing it. I'm not going to do it. So for those of us who don't have that, now we can have that to a degree online. We can have that to a degree that we connect with people online and we can talk like um, I can Zoom with another monastic and we can talk. And, if I have things that I need to kind of let go, like, let out and talk and stuff like that. But it's still not quite the same as being in a community that way. And so my thought is, well, if I can't find a community and I can't live in a community like that, well, I'm going to have to create my own community of it. Right. And so I don't necessarily have a perfect answer for you in that because I'm still going through it. So I can tell you kind of what I've learned and what I've experienced and what I'm trying to do. But I do believe that it should be a large part of your decision making of where you want to be. It really should. Now, of course, if you're like a layperson, you're outside. I'm just keeping an eye on the time so we can do our meditation. Then you might not really know. A place might look very good on the outside, but then you get there, and there's lots of infighting, and there's lots of problems, and the main teacher doesn't seem as wise as they did on the outside, and then he's like, oh, maybe this is not the best place for me to be. Right? But you have to kind of experience that and see that first to be able to say, okay, well, no, this is, so, but each place you go to, each place you can learn, okay, well, this is how I want to do it in the future. This is how I don't want to do it in the future. You can always learn those two things. And um, if you are a bit nomadic, you can find a place. But then there's also the downside of, well, you're kind of an outside person. Like most, like a lot of like lay people think like, oh, monks can just go anywhere. Like any monk will just accept any monk. And the reality is like that's not the case. That's not the case. There's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of reasons. Like, I am the abbot of this place, and we get this much in donations. We can only afford to have this many people here. There's lots of reasons, or they practice something that we don't practice here. There can be problems in the sun. There's lots of reasons. So it's not like they're being mean. It's just um, so all we can do now, if the Buddha tells us, at the very least, if we don't have any Kalyanamitas, don't be with foolish people either. It's better to wander alone like an elephant, right? Better to wander alone like a king that has left their kingdom. At the very least, minimize your contact with foolish people. Right? And that's what I also try to do. Right? You can't always avoid them, but you can minimize how much influence they're going to have over your life, because they will not be of benefit to you. You might be of benefit to them. Right? They actually maybe even might want to learn from you or something like that. But you don't want to be pulled down with them. You want to be able to be, if I don't have lots of Kalyanamitas, at the very least, I don't have any bala, no foolish people either. And so then you can just do the best you can do. To have the fact that you two sisters together doing the same thing, that's very good. Now, I mean, not all sisters get along. Obviously, not all brothers get along. But the fact that the two of you are doing the same thing, that's a very good thing. Right? You have somebody, right? Yeah. All right. So, okay, we're coming. It's time for meditation, and the chat is quiet. So why don't we do our meditation? All right, friends. So, for the first time in a long time, I'm doing Dhammapalooza actually on a cushion. All right. So, set your posture up in a stable and comfortable position that works for you. We'll spend a few minutes scanning through the body. And the reason why we do this is to check and make sure that our posture is balanced so that we don't cause any undue pain and suffering as we sit for a long period of time. And also to gradually move to the internal from the external, the world around us, the room, the building that we're in, moving towards our mind and body. Bring your awareness to your feet. By bring awareness, we mean to come into contact with any sensation that arises. What is the feeling of the feet pressing against the cushion or the floor? If you have trouble coming into contact with a sensation, you can prompt yourself by asking, what do I see? What do I feel? Bring your awareness up through the ankles into the calves. What is the feeling of the calves pressing against the cushion, the chair, the couch? Bring your awareness up through the knees and into the thighs. Try to observe how the position of your legs affects your posture. If you notice a small feeling of pain or discomfort, now is the time to adjust your posture because something small now, a small pain or a small imbalance in your posture, becomes much greater the longer we sit. Bring your awareness to the hips and pelvis. Observe how their position affects your posture in both the lower body and the spine. Bring your awareness up the spine, through the abdomen and the chest. Check that your upper body is not leaning or slouching here or there. Check that your shoulders are hanging loosely, not scrunched up and tight. Bring your awareness down through the arms to the elbows and hands. Check to see how the position of the elbows and hands affects your posture, affects the position of the spine. Finally, bring your awareness up to the head. Check to see that the chin is parallel to the floor. The head is not leaning or slouching here or there. Once you've set up your body in a stable and comfortable position, let the body go and take 3 deep silent breaths. And then let the breath go. From here on in, try not to manipulate or control the breath in any way. This body has been breathing from the moment you were born and will continue to do so until the second you die. It doesn't need you to do its job. Your job is to simply observe and investigate the breath as this body breathes in and breathes out. As you're following your breath, many things will seek to come to your mind: worries and responsibilities and burdens, family and friends, work and school. For the time of this meditation, practice letting go. Lay down your burdens and follow the breath. As you follow your breath, your mind may become bored and seek to run away to the past or the future, across the world or the galaxy. Or a distraction will come in from the outside like a sound. Your mind will chase after it. This is normal. You didn't fail or do anything wrong. This is simply the mind showing you how it works, showing you its craving. Whenever you get distracted away from the breath, there'll come a time where you gradually start to become mindful again. Recognize that you're not following the breath. At that point, try to bring all your mindfulness back. Acknowledge you've been taken away from the breath. Then practice letting go of the breath, of the distraction, by neither getting agitated and pushing it away, nor by getting excited about it and attaching to it. Simply give it no energy, let it be, and it will go as it came. And then return to the breath. Whenever You get distracted away, acknowledge, let go, and return over and over. This breath is home. The body is always breathing, whether we're paying attention to or not. We can always come back home to be with the breath. Acknowledge, let go, and return. Lay down your burdens. Every once in a while, check in with the state of your mind. Is your mind becoming more tranquil and peaceful or not? As the mind becomes more tranquil and still, you start to notice more subtle characteristics of the breath. Sometimes the breath is long and deep, sometimes short and shallow. Try to observe the impermanent, changing breath as it comes in and goes out. Check in with the state of your mind. If it's becoming more still and tranquil, you may begin to be able to see the full cycle of the breath. The body's breathing in, and the pause when the lungs are full of air. Body breathing out, and the pause when the lungs are empty of air. See if you can follow the full cycle of the breath. Investigate the in-betweens. What is that feeling of the point where the lungs are full of air? And when the lungs are empty of air? Watch the full cycle. Ding, ding, ding. And slowly open your eyes. Become aware of the external, the room around you, the beings in it, the live stream. Who is left? As usual, we had our precipitous drop off when it was time for meditation. There was also left. Of course, Adriana's always here. Even if it's just the two of us at the end. All right. Yeah, it did. The last couple Dhammapaloozas didn't have such a precipitous drop off, but this time definitely. It's okay. All right. So let's do our closing stuff. And for the purposes of anybody who might watch this later, we should do the. Amy, welcome. Meditation is not hip, huh? I guess. So, for those of you interested, the we have our online Discord community. If you're interested in learning and practicing according to the early Buddhist texts, you can join us. You can send an email to muggaseka@gmail.com. Adriana will put the that in the description. Yeah, she's already on it, as always. Um, you can, if you go to muggaseka.com, you can do like the little, I don't know if it's called subscribe or whatever, but you can sign up so that you can get notifications or anytime I make a post. You can also do the little subscribe and click the bell thing on YouTube. Again, anytime I go live, we you'll get the information. And I guess that's about that. I think we can do our sharing of merits. Dukkha patta chani dukkha baya patta chani baya sokha patta chani sokha hontu sabbe pipaniyo etavata cha mehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya Akasata Chabumata Devanaga Mahidika Punyang Tang Anumoditva Charang Rakantu Sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings inhabiting space and earth share in this merit with us, for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share this merit with us. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. As usual, I got the Pali 100% and I messed up on the English. All right, friends. Until next time, Sukhi Hotu, may you be happy. And we have a couple of people joining right at the end. Practice well and be well. Until next time, may you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice. All right. Have a good night.